When you look around, do you see a world of scarcity or abundance? This is a really important question. Let me explain why. But first, Joseph. You know, the guy with the crazy coat whose brothers sold him into slavery and he ended up working for Pharaoh, saving Egypt and his family from a famine. He and his brothers and all their children and grandchildren become the people of Israel and live in Egypt for more than 400 years. Their time in Egypt starts happy, but it doesn't stay that way. The children of Israel, also called Hebrews, grow in number and grow until a new Pharaoh comes on the scene who has no memory of Joseph and thinks there are just too many of these Hebrews around. Too many Hebrews, he figures, will be bad for Egyptians. Pharaoh believes the more these other people succeed and grow, the more they'll be in competition with his own people. Bible scholar Walter Brueggemann makes this interesting observation. Pharaoh introduces the principle of scarcity into the world economy. For the first time in the Bible, someone says, "There's not enough. Let's get everything." And of course, we know what happens next. First, Pharaoh assigns hard labor to the Hebrews. He enslaves them. If we make their lives miserable, maybe they'll stop having so many babies. But when that doesn't work, Pharaoh gets even more brutal. He orders the death of every male Hebrew baby. When we believe we live in a world of scarcity, of limited resources, we look at others with suspicion, with fear. There's only so much food, so much land, so much success to go around. The more you get, the less there will be for me. So I need to make sure you get less. Much of the world's injustice, meanness, is driven by a scarcity mentality. But God wanted the Israelites to see the world differently. He said, "Trust me, I'll provide for you. You will have enough." And he did provide. God provided water and food in the desert, a land rich in resources, protection from their enemies. He asked them to put down their work one day each week to show they trusted him to provide. God wanted his children to have a mindset of abundance, not scarcity. As my friend Skye Jatani puts it, where God and his kingdom are present, where heaven and earth overlap, there is always enough. We see this in Jesus' miracles of provision. The disciples see a world of scarcity, too many people to feed, not enough food or money to feed them. They get anxious, even angry. But Jesus shows them that wherever he is, there is always enough. And in the early church, in the book of Acts, we see the spirit of abundance at work. The early Christians came together, rich and poor, and in their little communities, tiny bubbles of the kingdom of God, everyone had enough. Still today, we wrestle between believing in scarcity or abundance. America is a land of plenty, of limitless potential and opportunity. Wave after wave of immigrants got on boats to come to this new world, this land of abundance. But there have always also been voices of scarcity in America, like everywhere else in the world, voices that say there isn't enough for everyone. Over the last 70 years, African Americans have achieved huge strides in America, gaining access to education, housing, and jobs. The rising success of the Black community has been inspiring. But research done by Michael Norton and Samuel Summers and published in 2011 showed that many white Americans view racism as a zero-sum game. The more they saw discrimination against Black Americans decreasing, the more they believed discrimination against white Americans was increasing. The success of the Black community must, they thought, be coming at the expense of the white community. As America has become ever more diverse, conservative columnist David Brooks has noticed a huge shift in the conservative movement from a mindset of abundance to a mindset of scarcity. In the years after Ronald Reagan, Brooks writes, the Republican Party was defined by its abundance mindset. Reagan-style conservatives were confident in the future and welcoming toward others. An abundance mindset led conservatives to see win-win situations everywhere. Today, Brooks sees a conservative movement that has embraced a scarcity mindset that believes resources are limited, the world is dangerous, group conflict is inevitable. It's us versus them. In contrast to the sunny optimism of Ronald Reagan, today's conservative movement is led by Donald Trump, whom Brooks describes as the personification of the scarcity mindset. Nowhere do we see this shift more than in attitudes towards immigrants. Reagan's abundance mindset led him to say this about immigrants in his final speech as president. Thanks to each wave of new arrivals to this land of opportunity, we're a nation forever young, forever bursting with energy and new ideas, and always on the cutting edge, always leading the world to the next frontier. This quality is vital to our future as a nation. Immigrants were, Reagan believed, vital to our future as a nation. In contrast, some of today's leading conservative voices say immigrants are poisoning the blood of our country and making America poorer and dirtier. And as we've seen time and time again throughout history, a scarcity mentality leads to fear, mistrust, and quite often, injustice. During the Trump administration in 2017 and 18, more than 5,000 children were separated from their parents at the U.S. southern border under a brutal policy intended to deter families from crossing the border by traumatizing the parents and children who did. Most concerning is the number of Christians who have followed along, allowing scarcity rather than divine abundance to color their views of others, to justify harsh treatments of immigrants, to let fear drive them to want a leader who defies Christian values. As prominent Southern Baptist pastor Robert Jeffress summed it up, "I want the meanest, toughest SOB I can find to protect this nation." In other words, when Christians lose sight of the abundance of God's kingdom and instead adopt a view of the world based on scarcity and fear, we start looking at the world more like Pharaoh did and less like Christ. Pharaoh's mindset was rooted in fear, fear of losing power, of losing what's ours. But Christ's mindset is rooted in love, love that multiplies, provides, and invites others in. When Americans adopt a scarcity mindset, it's sad. When Christians adopt a scarcity mindset, it's tragic. Where God and His kingdom are present, there is always enough.